When the world gave them nothing but fear, these children answered with courage. From a boy trapped deep in a mine with air slipping away, to siblings in the Amazon carving shelter from branches, their cries swallowed by the jungle.
A miracle rescue in the Amazon jungle. 4 children found alive. How did they survive for 40 days?
These weren't just rescues, they were battles between nature and sheer human will. Get ready to witness the 20 most unbelievable child rescues ever recorded. Teen trapped in mine. Rescuers pull teen boy from 50-foot shaft after rope snaps in remote California mine. A boy was trapped deep inside a mountainside mine on Monday after a rope snapped and sent him plunging nearly 30 feet to the bottom of a shaft. He was out of sight, out of reach, and running out of strength. The teen and his friends had ventured into an abandoned mine in the Auburn State Recreation Area near China Bar. They rappelled 40 to 50 feet down using a household rope, making their way 180 feet into the side of the mountain. On the climb out, the rope broke. The teen fell hard and was unable to climb back up. He managed to brace himself on a narrow ledge and waited. At 3:27 p.m., crews from Placer County and Auburn City responded. The teen's friends led rescuers into the mine. A technical rescue team from Placer County arrived with a lightweight rope system and air monitoring gear. Working in a confined, unstable space, they reached the teen and hauled him to safety. He was taken to a local trauma center. His condition has not been released. Officials highlighted the serious risks of entering abandoned mines and commended the rescue team for their precision under pressure. The teen's name remains undisclosed. Colombian Amazon Jungle Kids. The jungle did not let go easily. For 40 days, 4 siblings, ages 13, 9, 4, and 1, fought to survive after a plane crash killed their mother and left them alone in one of the most unforgiving landscapes on Earth. The Amazon was dense, wet, and full of danger. Jaguars roamed. Venomous snakes slid through thick undergrowth. Rain fell hard and often. But the children, members of the indigenous Witoto people, knew the forest. Their knowledge didn't come from books. It came from home, from games played with their aunt, from survival taught by their grandmother. Leslie, the oldest, led. She built shelters from branches and hair ties. She gathered farinha, a cassava flower, from the crash site and rationed it carefully. When it ran out, they turned to seeds, fruits, anything edible the jungle could offer. They moved often, leaving behind signs, footprints, bits of food, half-eaten fruit. Rescue teams passed within 65 feet more than once. Helicopters dropped leaflets in their language. Loudspeakers played messages from family. Still, the jungle kept its silence. Then, on day 40, a rescue dog picked up a scent. Leslie was holding the baby. Her first words were simple: "I'm hungry." One brother had a bacaba seed in his mouth, chewing it like gum. They were thin, tired, but alive. This wasn't luck. It wasn't a miracle. It was survival built on memory, instinct, and strength passed down through generations. Toddler trapped in well. On October 14, 1987, 18-month-old Jessica McClure fell into a narrow, 8-inch wide well shaft in her aunt's backyard in Midland, Texas. She dropped 22 feet below ground. Alone, wedged in darkness, her situation quickly drew national attention. And soon, the eyes of the world were watching. Rescue workers, oil drillers, and paramedics mobilized in force. Midland's energy workforce, skilled in precision drilling, brought expertise the moment demanded. But it wasn't easy. The well casing was tight, the earth hard, and Jessica's position, with one leg above her head, was dangerous. For 58 hours, she remained trapped. Crews worked non-stop. On the night of October 16th, they finally reached her. Jessica emerged alive, battered but breathing. She had a deep forehead cut and a foot injury that nearly led to amputation. Doctors opted for hyperbaric therapy, which saved her leg, though she lost one toe to gangrene. She would undergo 15 surgeries in the years to follow. The image of baby Jessica, lifted from the well into the waiting arms of paramedics, became etched in American memory. One of those paramedics, Robert O'Donnell, struggled in the years that followed. After the intense public spotlight faded, he battled PTSD and eventually died by suicide in 1995. Jessica grew up near Midland, married in 2006, and is now a mother of 2. At 25, she received a trust fund built from global donations, most of it later lost in the 2008 crash. Her scar remains, but she remembers nothing of the rescue. Well Side Rescue, Thailand. Just miles from the Myanmar border, a 19-month-old girl slipped through a narrow 12-inch wide opening and fell 42 feet into a well. It was late Monday afternoon. Her parents, migrant workers from Myanmar, had left her resting under a tree while they worked a tapioca field nearby. When she vanished and faint cries echoed from the well, panic took hold. Authorities arrived quickly. What followed was an intense overnight rescue operation. Using mechanical diggers, teams cut a 32.8 feet pit beside the well. Oxygen was pumped down to keep the child breathing. As the dig neared the final stretch, rescuers switched to hand tools. The soil was unstable. One wrong move could cause a collapse. For hours, crews in hard hats worked in shifts, removing the last feet of earth by hand. The fear was quiet but constant. Any pressure could cause the well to cave in on the trapped toddler. Around 8 a.m. local time, they reached her. She had an injured leg and was fatigued but alive. Extraction took time, but soon after, cheers broke out. The girl was lifted to safety. She was rushed to a nearby hospital. Officials confirmed minor injuries and signs of exhaustion, but her vitals were good. She is expected to recover fully. Rescue worker Chanachart Wancharanrung summed up the effort simply. "We worked without sleep. Everyone helped. One child, one well, one night, hundreds came together, and they didn't stop until she was safe." Bore Well Rescue, Karnataka. In Lachayan village, Karnataka, a 2-year-old boy named Satwik Mujagand fell into an open bore well while playing near his home. The bore well, dug into his family's own farmland, was narrow and deep, and the child slipped down to an estimated depth of 15 to 20 feet. It was Wednesday evening. The ground was dry and unstable. Rescue operations began around 6:30 p.m. Satwik was heard crying early Thursday, giving hope to rescue teams. Oxygen pipes were lowered to help him breathe. Specialized crews from the state and National Disaster Response Forces joined the operation. Workers skilled in tube well drilling were also brought in. The bore well's narrow opening complicated the process. Rescuers had to work carefully, balancing speed with safety. Through the night and into the next day, police, firefighters, and local officials remained on site. As hours passed, anxiety built, but rescue teams kept moving, digging, monitoring, listening. Finally, after more than 20 tense hours underground, Satwik was pulled to the surface. Footage from the scene shows the boy covered in mud, strapped to a stretcher, lifted out to loud cheers. He was immediately placed into a waiting ambulance, attended by a medical team. Officials confirmed he was alive, showing signs of exhaustion but no major injuries. Karnataka Minister M.B. Patil praised the efforts, calling for urgency and expressing relief at the child's safe return. Newborn baby rescue. A 2-day-old baby was found trapped inside a toilet pipe, flushed, abandoned, and still attached to his placenta. On a Saturday afternoon, residents heard faint cries coming from a 4th-floor squat toilet. What they discovered led to a rescue effort that drew national attention and sparked outrage across China. When firefighters arrived, they found the newborn lodged deep within a narrow, vertical sewage pipe beneath the toilet bowl. Initial attempts to remove him by hand failed. With time slipping away, rescuers cut out a section of the pipe, baby still inside, and rushed it to the hospital. There, doctors and firefighters worked together for nearly an hour, using saws and pliers to free the infant. When he was finally pulled out, he was bloodied and bruised, but alive. Weighing just over 5 pounds, he had suffered cuts to his face and limbs from the rough, rusted metal. He is now in stable condition. The baby had been trapped for at least 2 hours. His survival is a mix of resilience and sheer urgency by those who responded. Police have opened an investigation into who abandoned him, treating it as a case of attempted murder. The incident ignited anger across Chinese social media, especially on Weibo. Many voiced grief and rage, some pointing to the pressures young, unwed mothers face, or the lingering impact of social stigma and the one-child policy. The baby, for now unnamed, survived a brutal start. He wasn't thrown away. He was rescued, Rescue in Michigan Park. 8-year-old Nante Niemi was last seen Saturday afternoon in Michigan's Porcupine Mountains wilderness, a vast, rugged stretch of forest near Lake Superior. He had gone to collect firewood near his family's campsite and didn't return. By nightfall, the alarm was raised. Over the next 2 days, 150 rescuers from Michigan and Wisconsin scoured 40 square miles of remote terrain, thick woods, steep slopes, and cold spring air. Nante, from Hurley, Wisconsin, was on his first family camping trip. As the search intensified, his mother urged the public to stay back, worried too many people might interfere with trained teams. Helicopters, search dogs, and dozens of volunteers pressed on. Late Monday afternoon, search party volunteers spotted him under a log about 2 miles from camp. Nante had wandered off the trail and, when he realized he was lost, found a place to shelter. He told police he covered himself with branches and leaves to stay warm and survived by eating clean snow. He was unharmed. Photos show a tired but smiling Nante, surrounded by relieved rescuers. His school district celebrated his return, writing, "Words cannot describe the emotions and joy the students and staff are experiencing." In the deep woods, far from roads and routine, a young boy did what he could to survive, and a small army of determined strangers made sure he didn't stay lost. Russian girl in Siberian forest. At age 4, Karina Chikatova survived nearly 2 weeks alone in the Siberian wilderness, her only companion a small mongrel puppy named Nida. Lost in the dense taiga of Russia's Yakutia region, a place prowled by wolves and brown bears. She lived on berries and river water, huddling with Nida for warmth through freezing nights. Her story of survival, broadcast around the world, became a symbol of resilience. Now, 4 years later, Karina is 8 and studying ballet in Yakutsk, 350 miles from her remote village. She's a second-year student at a specialized boarding school, where teachers see in her the makings of a professional dancer. Karina says she loves to study, though it isn't always easy. She's already danced on stage and dreams of performing Swan Lake. Between classes, she's learning piano and the jaw harp. Her ballet instructor, Daria Ivanova, 66, calls Karina physically strong, exceptionally flexible, and emotionally expressive, traits critical in Russia's elite dance world. Ivanova believes they'll know by age 10 whether Karina can pursue ballet professionally. Back in Yakutsk, a statue of Karina and Nida stands in tribute to their survival. During her ordeal in August 2014, it was Nida who returned to the village, guiding rescuers back to Karina. She was found thin, scratched, and exhausted, but alive. From the wilds of the Siberian forest to the discipline of a ballet studio, Karina's path has never been typical. What hasn't changed is her quiet strength. Australian bush boy Anthony A.J. Elfalak, a 3-year-old who has autism and is nonverbal, vanished on a Friday morning from his family's remote property in Putty, New South Wales. One moment he was playing with his brothers, then he was gone. His disappearance sparked immediate fears of abduction. Police opened a criminal investigation. A white vehicle was seized. Nothing was ruled out. For 3 days, more than 100 searchers combed the bushland, rough, remote terrain stretching for miles. Helicopters scanned from above. Volunteers walked every path. His parents barely slept. His father, Anthony, remained in the bush for days without rest, his body breaking down under exhaustion. Then, on Monday, a police helicopter spotted movement near a creek, just 1,640 feet from the house. AJ was there, crouched down, drinking from the water, drenched, scraped, and covered in ant bites, but alive. "I've got the boy," came the call over the radio. Relief swept through the teams. Cheers broke out among waiting family. AJ had survived nearly 3 full days alone in the wilderness. Somehow, he'd found water. Somehow, he'd kept going. His injuries were minor. Medics said he was in good health. His father called it a miracle. "No one can understand what it's like to go through this," he said. "But he's alive. That's all that matters." The reason AJ wandered off is still unknown. The questions remain. But for now, the answer that mattered most arrived beside a creek in the bush. He was found, lost in Montana wilderness, vanished from his yard, 3-year-old Riker Webb, on a quiet afternoon near Bull Lake, Montana. One moment, he was playing with the family dog. The next, he was gone. His father had stepped inside briefly. When he returned, Riker had disappeared into the forested backcountry, A code red alert was issued. Neighbors searched their properties. Sheriff's deputies and search teams deployed ATVs, drones, and tracking dogs. Rain and dense vegetation slowed progress. Helicopters were grounded by poor visibility. For 2 nights, the boy was alone in deep wilderness, dressed only in feety pajamas. He had no food, no shelter. No one knew where he'd gone. On the morning of June 5th, nearly 48 hours later, Riker was found 2.3 miles from home on Pine Ridge Road. A thunderstorm had driven him to seek shelter, and he'd curled up inside a small log cabin shed. When rescuers reached him, he was cold, hungry, and covered in dirt, but alive. Authorities say Riker hadn't interacted with anyone during the ordeal. He had survived on his own. EMTs transported him to Cabinet Peaks Medical Center for evaluation. He was reportedly in good spirits. The search involved more than 12 agencies and over 50 volunteers, including local fire departments, state wildlife officials, the Montana Air National Guard, and search teams from 3 counties. Riker's survival wasn't expected. It wasn't even likely. But the quiet determination of one small boy and a massive push from his community made the impossible real.
Okay, now it's time for the open discussion.
Trapped underground and gasping for light, this is the most unbelievable child rescue in all of the world that defied every odd. With dirt-smeared faces and trembling hands, these boys emerged from the shadows of a forgotten tunnel. What led them deep into that cave? And who finally heard their cries? The rescue wasn't just brave, it was a miracle. Can you imagine being stuck with no food, no light, no way out, and then a hand reaches in? Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to mention #OpenDiscussion, rescue after 2 days. He got separated from his family while foraging for mushrooms. 10-year-old Malachi Bradley in the Utah wilderness near the Wyoming border. It was Sunday afternoon when he vanished. The terrain, remote and rugged, spans hundreds of square miles. As night fell, temperatures dropped into the upper 30s. Malachi was alone, shoeless, and miles from camp. Search teams worked fast. A rescue helicopter scanned deep into the high country, knowing hypothermia was a real risk. Malachi had no gear, no food, and no shelter, just a coat and his instincts. He spent the night tucked beneath a rock, using his jacket to stay warm. More than 24 hours after he disappeared, rescuers spotted him. A helicopter brought him out. In video footage, Malachi appears calm, even smiling as he reunites with his family. When asked what it was like, he simply said, "It was actually really fun." He estimated he'd hiked 30 miles. Authorities didn't confirm the distance, but acknowledged the boy had covered significant ground. He wasn't shaken. He just wanted to get back. The search reminded many of the dangers in the area: sudden weather shifts, confusing terrain, and the ease with which anyone, even seasoned hikers, can get turned around. One father whose son vanished there in 2004 and was never found called rescues like this a needle in a haystack. But Malachi didn't panic. He kept moving, stayed warm, and held on. Rescue in Utah mountains. When 9-year-old Stratton Wright went missing during a family hike near Bear Lake in Utah's Henry's Fork drainage, night was already closing in. Around 8 p.m., he became separated from his uncle, cousins, and siblings. They searched but couldn't find him. Calls went out. Search teams mobilized. Helicopters scanned the area. Horses and trained crews entered the mountains. But it was his father, racing down from Idaho and arriving at 3 a.m., who would bring him home. Stratton had done everything right. Once he realized he was lost, he stayed calm. He found a safe place 5 miles from the trailhead and waited out the night. He knew to conserve energy, knew to find open ground where rescuers might spot him. In the morning, he walked into a field and waited. That's where his father found him, walking out of a wooded area and spotting his son in the clearing. Stratton saw the figure approaching and ran to him. A tearful reunion followed. Sheriff Justin Martinez later said, "That's a testament to a father-son bond. He found him faster than we did." Stratton was tired and slightly dehydrated, but otherwise in good health. He even asked if he could stay and finish the camping trip. His father said no. They went home. The boy's first request? A Twix bar. "This is a great example of a young man who stayed calm," said Martinez. He knew what he needed to do to be found, sheltered by tarp. For 3 days, 9-year-old Jordan Gorman was missing in the woods of Cheatham County, Tennessee, without any jacket or shoes, just a pair of pajamas and the will to keep going. He had run off after a disagreement at home on Sunday afternoon. By nightfall, the search had begun. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation issued an endangered child alert, later upgraded to an Amber Alert. Dozens of searchers combed the dense, cold forest northwest of Nashville. The nights dipped into the low 30s. On Tuesday around 3 p.m., a Kentucky-based rescue crew spotted a flash of blue in the brush, just 3/4 of a mile from Jordan's home. It was a tarp stretched low to the ground near a creek bed. One rescuer approached, fearing the worst. But then the tarp moved. Inside was Jordan, cold, barefoot, and hungry, but alive. He was in pretty good spirits, authorities reported. His makeshift shelter had likely saved him from exposure during 2 freezing nights. A crew member, Matthew Reese, said finding him was overwhelming. It was just the biggest holy crap. I got him. The terrain was dense and easy to get lost in. Rescuers had passed close by earlier. Only the glint of that blue tarp changed everything. Jordan was quickly reunited with his family and taken for medical evaluation. Aside from dehydration and minor cold-related stress, he was okay. 6-year-old found safe. 6-year-old Caden Leach vanished from his home in rural Blount County, Tennessee, one evening in 2018. He wore only a black t-shirt, gray sweatpants, and slip-on shoes. One of the family's small dogs, a black and white terrier, was missing too. As daylight faded, a full-scale search was launched across 2,000 acres of rugged mountain terrain. Nearly 100 first responders mobilized. The military sent a Black Hawk helicopter equipped with FLIR heat-sensing technology. Deputies, volunteers, and rescue dogs worked through the night, sweeping the area on foot. The terrain was steep and remote. Hope was tested by the hour. 22 hours later, deputies searching a half-mile from the home heard something unusual: growling. As they moved closer, the sound intensified. Then they saw him, Caden, alert and safe, curled up on the ground. By his side, the terrier stood protectively, teeth bared, guarding the boy from the approaching strangers. The dog hadn't left him once. Rescuers wrapped Caden in jackets and carried him out of the woods. He was cold and frightened, but unharmed. The small dog, now hailed a hero, had likely kept him warm and protected through the long night. He was definitely watched over, one deputy said. For nearly a full day, a 6-year-old boy survived alone in the wild, and he didn't do it alone. His protector had 4 legs, sharp eyes, and refused to leave his side. Rescued from forest, Dang Tien Lam disappeared in the forests of Yen Bai Province, Vietnam, on August 17th. He had been playing by a stream with his 9 siblings before heading home alone. Somewhere between the water and his relative's house, he vanished. Authorities launched a massive search. 200 people, police, soldiers, and local volunteers combed the terrain. Investigators reviewed CCTV footage for signs of abduction. Streams and fish ponds were drained to rule out drowning, but days passed and no sign of Lam emerged. Then, just before noon on Wednesday, a local farmer, Lai Van Nang, returned to his tent deep in the forest to eat lunch. He heard faint cries coming from nearby. In a bush, he found Lam, thin, weak, and unable to stand. The boy was exhausted and starving. He asked Nang if he had anything to eat. He said he had become lost, and the more he walked, the further from home he felt. Some reports say he survived without food or water for days. Others suggest he lived on wild fruit, leaves, and stream water. Nang carried him down the hillside to safety, where Lam was reunited with his family. From there, he was taken to a medical facility for treatment. Lam's voice had faded, and his legs could no longer support him, but he had made it. Drone rescue. On the night of August 25th in Alto, Wisconsin, a young boy vanished into a dense cornfield. The stalk stood 6 feet tall, stretching in every direction. Darkness had already set in. Just after 8:45 p.m., deputies from the Fond du Lac County Sheriff's Office were called in. Searching on foot would take hours, time the child might not have. Instead, authorities launched a thermal imaging drone. In grainy black and white footage, the corn appeared as a rippling, textured grid. Then, just before 9:30 p.m., something shifted. A bright white spot moved through the screen. It was the missing boy, his body heat disrupting the uniform rows. First responders from the sheriff's office and Alto Fire Department locked onto the signal. In the thermal video, their own white heat signatures can be seen weaving through the stalks, closing in. Within 15 minutes, they reached the child. He was about half a mile from home, disoriented but safe. Without the drone, officials said the search could have dragged on for hours, with no guarantee of success. The cornfield was too large, the visibility too low. Technology gave rescuers eyes in the dark and a direct path to the child. He was brought out gently and driven back to his parents, unharmed. "This is why we invest in tools like this," said the sheriff's office, "and why we train together." Children alone on mountain. 2 children from Georgia, ages 6 and 7, spent a night alone in the forest near Munro Lake on Burke Mountain, British Columbia. They had been hiking with their father on a clear Sunday afternoon, aiming to reach the lake for a bit of fishing. But somewhere along the way, they lost the trail, and then everything changed. The trio fell down a steep, rugged slope into a creek drainage. Injured and disoriented, the father faced an impossible decision. The climb back up was too dangerous for the children, so he wrapped them in warm clothes, told them not to move, and set off alone, wounded and unsure, through dense terrain, hiking miles until he found cell service and called for help. Search crews got the alert around 7 p.m. As night fell, they searched without rest. At 8:30 a.m. Monday morning, rescuers located the children exactly where they had been left. They hadn't moved. They were cold but unharmed. Their father was standing nearby when they were extracted by helicopter an hour later. "This was really a miraculous rescue," said Ian McDonald of Coquitlam Search and Rescue. "You can imagine, we've all got kids. It was emotional." Police praised the father for making a painful but necessary call, and the children for listening. They stayed calm. They stayed put. 14-year-old hero saves toddler. In April 2013, in the small Romanian town of Segarcea, a toddler slipped into a narrow 65-foot well. The opening was too tight for any adult. The clock was ticking. Oxygen was thinning. Rescue crews had no clear way forward until 14-year-old Cristian Marian Bacianu volunteered. Cristian was local, slim, and just small enough to fit. A rope was tied around his waist. He was lowered into the dark shaft. It wasn't one try. It wasn't easy. Cristian went down again and again, inching deeper each time into the cold, narrow void. Rescuers worked nonstop for nearly 11 hours. Cristian stayed with it, driven by instinct and courage well beyond his years. Eventually, he reached the 1.5-year-old boy, secured him, and gave the signal. Together, they were pulled back into the light. The baby was alive, frightened, dehydrated, but safe. Cristian's quiet bravery drew national attention. Romanian media called him a hero. Officials praised him. Strangers reached out to thank him. But Cristian was clear. "I was scared, but I wanted to help. I knew I could do it." It's easy to measure courage in titles or age. But that day, it came from a teenager in jeans, wrapped in rope, descending into darkness because no one else could. Alone, among lions. Tinotenda Pudu vanished near his village in Zimbabwe and wandered straight into Matusadonha National Park, 570 square miles of raw wilderness and one of Africa's most predator-dense regions. Lions, leopards, elephants, buffalo. This is not a place for the unprepared. And yet, he survived. Tinotenda lost his way while playing, unknowingly heading deeper into the park. He walked nearly 15 miles before finding a rocky perch where he stayed alone for 5 nights. With no shelter and no protection, he slept within earshot of roaring lions and moving elephants. He lived on wild fruits. He stayed alive. As news of his disappearance spread, search teams mobilized. Park rangers, villagers, and rescue teams scoured the bush, beating drums in the hopes the boy would follow the sound. For days, there was nothing. Then rangers found his footprints. On day 5, they found him. Exhausted, hungry, and barefoot, Tinotenda was still standing. He had no serious injuries, just a body worn thin by fear, cold nights, and survival. The local member of parliament, Mutsa Murambedzi, called it a true miracle, later adding, "It was too much for a child." And yet, he endured. Matusadonha is a place where full-grown adults lose their way. Tinotenda, just 7, held on through 5 days and nights of isolation in one of the wildest corners of Africa, saved from flood. In the wreckage of the Znamnoy Dam collapse in southern Laos, a 4-month-old baby boy was pulled from waist-high mud and floodwaters, terrified, soaked, and crying. The infant had survived days without food after flash floods destroyed his village. Along with 13 others, he had fled to higher ground when the dam gave way under heavy rains. For days, they waited, stranded and surrounded by debris, broken trees, and rushing water. Their rescue was captured in a viral video. A Thai volunteer wading through swirling brown water, clutching the baby close to his chest. The child's eyes are wide. He shivers in silence. Around them, the landscape is unrecognizable, choked with mud and shattered timber. The Thai team had only just returned from the high-profile rescue of 12 boys and their soccer coach trapped in a cave. Now, they were in neighboring Laos, where resources were scarce and the damage overwhelming. The baby didn't have a fever, but he was crying. Maybe from the cold, said Kengkard Bongkawong, one of the rescuers. They were all still terrified of the rushing water. The video spread quickly, 500,000 views within hours, showing a moment of fragile relief amid devastation. While officials struggled to clarify casualty figures, what remained clear was the desperation on the ground. The baby lived. So did his group, because someone reached them in time. That's the video. If it made sense or made you think, do one thing: like, share, or follow. That's how this grows, and how you don't miss what's next.